happy Sunday, happy LG G5 day. Before we go any further, let's double check that audio. And I'm putting up what I saw at LG a couple of days ago, so you guys can watch that for fun. I mean, it's nothing critical. This is me just kind of walking around, so that's what the video is. Don't use that to make any decisions. However, we are going to talk about, is the LG G5 for you today? And I put up kind of like the basic specs that are important to the G5 this year compared to the G4 last year, right? Because I feel that the G4 was a pretty good TV. Essentially, it is a flagship that hasn't changed. And if you see some of my footage here with the G4 to the left and the G5 right next to it, then you have the S95D and the A95L on that table right there, you'll see that the G5 and G4 are suspiciously very similar. Ignore the color differences, please, because even on my DJI that I'm using to capture it, each panel technology is slightly different, right? And they're uncalibrated out of the box. So you add panel variability on the color side, and you throw into that the different technologies where the camera sensors, all camera sensors, are hypersensitive to certain colors depending on the technology. So it's interesting that although both the G4 and the G5 are WOLED, the G5 appears to be slightly more sensitive to teal, cyan maybe, and the G4 is a little more sensitive to the blue, and then you have the magenta push to my camera on the Samsung, and the Sony is slightly different from a Samsung. So ignore the colors, but you can look at the contrast and the brightness because that's kind of like something you can look at through a camera sensor. All right, so today we're going to talk about LG G5. Who's it for? Obviously, it's awesome, but there are other flagship OLED TVs out there as well. Last year's, right? S95C or D. I'm 2 years late on that one. S95D, G4, Sony A95L, right? The king of TVs 2 years running. And then this year's options, we have the G5, the S95F, and Sony's mystery release, which may or may not end up being an OLED anyway. So that discussion needs to be pushed off until we find out. And of course, the Panasonic version of LG's 4-stack primary RGB OLED technology, and how does that perform, right? I know a lot of you have complained that maybe the Panasonic Z95B is not using the latest MediaTek gaming profiles on that chip, or rather the features on the latest chip, or rather the latest chip, right? So for those who are buying Panasonic as a movie watching machine, I don't think that's a problem. Gaming, let's wait until we get that in and see how well it really does. Okay, so with kind of that all out of the way, today I really want to get to your questions because I know a lot of you have a lot of questions, and this is kind of like the slideshow that LG was showing to us so we can share with you all about, a little bit about what they're bringing to the table this year, a little bit of history. So watch it, ignore it, it really doesn't matter. I'm really here for you guys. So let's say hello to everyone real quick. And we got David Whelan, Mike Wyckoff, hey, Matthias, Matt and Bev, right? A lot of oldies but goodies. Miyako, best girl, hey, hey. Hi, everyone. Chintu Pat, hey, I see you on Twitter, not often here. Welcome, welcome. Cedric, Quackfu, a lot of regulars, Willie, and Visa, and a lot of the most disliked channel. Man, it's great to see all of you. It's been a while. Well, although I had a live stream a few days ago, I didn't really get a chance to answer your questions. So that's why I have today to answer whether the G5 is something you should seriously consider, or maybe save a few hundred, maybe even 1,000 on the G4 if you're into LG, and how bad is that anti-glare on the S95D and the S95F. I can't get too much into the S95F from what I've seen, only because of embargoes, NDAs. That being what they are, you'll get more of that shortly. So we'll just focus on the G5 for now, because you can't buy either TV anyway. And well, we'll have some release information on Monday. So on Monday, you're going to get everything, right? From pricing to a lot. I'm going to talk to Robert at Value Electronics, and I'm going to put out a video tomorrow about the G5, the pricing, what you can expect to get, and a little something special, because if you order from Robert, the FOMO deal, I'm going to have to include this because some people asked for it, the FOMO deal gets you a stand. Because a lot of people saying, hey, wait, If I order from Robert and said FOMO sent me, is he going to throw in a stand? I go, you know what? Let me talk to Robert. Robert's like, yeah, that's fine. He'll throw in a stand. So if a stand is something that is keeping you from getting the G5, Robert's like, you know what? Just say FOMO sent you and I'll throw in a stand. So, and you'll get some additional discounts as well and bundle deals. But most importantly, if you don't want anything else, he'll still throw in a stand for you as part of the purchase price, and he'll match the best price on the internet. Okay, so questions, throw it out there, hit me. A stand with FOMO. I like that comment, Michael. Let's see. Yeah, it's yeah, you fear of missing out on a stand. I know I do. I don't like to use the wall in my house only because I have so many TVs to move around. So I understand it when you need a stand. Okay, let's see. Here's a good point that Classy makes. Hey, thank you for jumping in, Classy. And I wanted to emphasize this. The game mode had reduced color luminance prior to the G4, prior to, I guess, the more refined MLA. It was to prevent burn-in. They are more confident in that now, and that's why that's changed. More importantly, they are the only TV model, G5, G4, G3, I think G2 even, that includes a 5-year factory panel replacement warranty. That includes burn-in. I know if you get it at Costco, that's thrown in with the price of the TV. But for those who don't have access to Costco, this is great. Now, doesn't include labor, but labor is not the big expense here. LG is doing what they can to make sure you come back for another flagship OLED. So that is how much they believe in it. Because a lot of you have mentioned before, hey, if they are so big on reliability, why don't they extend the warranty? And that's what LG is doing. So yeah, that's something for you to consider. And often the reason why I tell people to get the G5 or the G4 over a competing similarly priced flagship, I understand they're not quite as critical as many of us reviewers are, but everyone wants a reliable panel, and that 5-year panel replacement warranty is what pushes me to give them that suggestion, because I figure, you know what, they're within 5% performance, and I know for sure they're not going to be watching Jennifer Gallo's content 24/7, mostly Netflix, news, old TV shows. If that's the case, that 5-year warranty is more important, I think, to the purchase price than any of the small minor features or whatever it is that us reviewers end up spending a little bit too much time talking about. And we're going to go over how important some of these special features are in a minute. Let me see if you guys have any questions real quick. FOMO, how do you feel about finally shilling an actual good product for once? I love all the products. Wait. See that? See, solid gold, baby. So yeah, so I got this cap from LG several years back. I think I was at one of their booths. They were giving out swag to everyone. But it's black embroidery on black. I'm like, I can't properly shill for LG if they can't even tell I'm wearing LG merch, right? So I went and got a metallic gold paint, and there you have it. This is my LG custom-made gold trimmed embroidered hat. So hopefully that will help convince you that not only am I a shill for everyone apparently, but this week it's LG. But as you all know, in all honesty, there's a TV for everyone. And more importantly, every TV model has a design objective, whether it's to get you the most prioritized performance for value, but it kind of cuts corners in things that you may not notice. The classic example, and I had to laugh with this at the various TV makers who complain about the competition maybe cutting corners, and we're like, okay, let's say a TV has 100 screws to keep it together, and the less expensive maker maybe only has 98 screws. And they'll keep on removing screws. At some point, the TV will fall apart. The question is, how many screws can they remove where the TV is just barely held together? And that's what they push out the door. And, you know, we're being facetious with the screw example, but that applies to almost everything, right? As you saw, we have this past week 2 class action lawsuits against TCL and Hisense for not having quantum dots, although they market their TV as having quantum dots. And at first I was like, okay, that is wrong. You can't tell someone they have something, then bait and switch and not have it. But that aside, the more important question for consumers are, well, first, does it make a difference? I mean, not having quantum dots, having it, is there really a color performance difference? I did not know what that color performance difference is. And second, well, if it drops the price of the TV by $200, maybe it's something that the consumer would accept anyway. So the last part, you know what, it's all about money. Let's throw it aside. Let's talk about what does quantum dots bring to the table. So I recently learned that at Nanosys, and if you guys saw my post maybe during CES, where you have a white laser, this bright white laser, and they were moving a panel across the laser, and then as the laser is crossing the panel, half the panel is a quantum dot layer, and the other half is a backlight layer without quantum dots. And without quantum dots, there is definitely a red ghosting decay behind the white light. And they explained to me, red has a longer decay time when there's no quantum dot. The quantum dot releases all the light at the same time. So when you run this white laser light across quantum dot, everything stays together. There is no delayed decay from the red because of the quantum dot, right? It releases everything. Without quantum dot, the materials hold on to that red longer. I mean, that's essentially what it looks like, but it's a decay time. The decay lasts longer on non-quantum dots. So this applies only to LCD TVs. And when I saw that, it hit me, oh my gosh. Before Hisense added more quantum dots in their TVs, if you guys remember, the Hisense H9F and the H9G and many other TVs had this red ghosting problem where you had characters walk across the screen, the crown specifically, you know, her red hair starts to trail behind her, her red freckles starts to trail behind her. And I had no clue why this is happening. Everyone blamed it on processing. No, it is probably not using quantum dots. And at the time, the TVs didn't have quantum dots anyway. And so when a lot of these TV makers are saying, you know what, we don't need quantum dots anymore. And you know, and they're outright saying, like this year, LG QNED, hey, we found a better solution. It doesn't have quantum dots. Are they going to have a red ghosting effect without quantum dots? Did they find a material that performed the same? And this was specific to video game monitors, right? PC monitors. But I told Nanosys, wait, this goes beyond PC game monitors. I understand the fast action with the red ghosting, but it happens with regular content in 24p, 30p, right? You don't have to go to gaming at 120p, 60p to see this. He was like, I didn't know that. I'm like, this was a problem with the first generation Hisense TVs, the red ghosting. It's probably because they didn't have quantum dots. Now, these class action lawsuits are for recent vintage Hisense and TCL TVs, maybe the last 2 years. So I think the Q6 is the one from TCL that's being hit with a class action last week. And then we know Hisense is, I forget what the model numbers are, but regardless, right? Not having quantum dots. Now I see the problem and we can talk about it. So that's something that I wanted to get caught up on with you guys. But let's go talk about the shilling for an actual good product. I want you guys to be happy, because if I make a recommendation and you get the TV and you're unhappy, then you're never going to come back. And my goal is for you to come back, enjoy the discussion, and share your experience that this TV that I recommended actually worked for your use case. And at the end of the day, if it works for your use case, that's all that counts. And if your use case changes, we can talk about that. Like, the biggest question always is, well, I know this OLED is amazing, but I could only afford $2,000, but I could get a 98-inch for $2,000. Is that immersion worth giving up the amazing OLED that's maybe 65 inches, right? That's a tough one, going from 65 to 98, but that's why we're here to talk about it. All right. And PFS XM3 saying, well, PFS phosphor is cause of red ghosting according to this. So I don't know what causes the red ghosting. We just know that having the quantum dot eliminates the red ghosting. As long as the quantum dot is part of the backlight, the correct layer where the red image strikes, it will emit all the lights at in the same time, right? The decay is matched. So, but it's very interesting. I mean, now we're diving deep into display physics and chemistry where, you know, stop the FOMO. You fear of missing out on chemistry? No. All right. Michael has a good point. Once you go OLED, it's hard to go back. And Michael's a man that used to have, I know he still does, one of the original TCL 6 series that I really loved. The 2018, 2019 models This is before the TVs went crazy awesome. I mean, these are really good TVs. This is when TCL was known for having the most reliable $700 TV, right? And back then, the 6 Series was that. And Michael loved it. And then suddenly he started getting OLED. I don't know if he still watches his TCL 6 Series, but I'll tell you, and he's OLED, all OLED for him now. Oh, so here's a good comparison. The S95F supposedly reaches 400 nits full field. So Vincent at HDTV Test, brother from another mother, popularly known, he measured it in his last video, 360 nits full field versus last year's G4 at 230. Now, is there a big difference between 360 and the alleged 400 nits full field on the Samsung? And so I'll tell you this, that 40 nit difference is impossible to distinguish with just your eyeball. You need a meter to do that. So when I see 360 to 400, or let's say the S95F ends up having 300, right? Not a big deal. Now, going from 230 to 360 is a little bit more noticeable, because, and this is why nits are measured logarithmically, right? As you go higher and higher in nits, in order to notice a brightness difference, you have to double the nits. So the difference between 50 nits and 100 nits is doubled. But you add another 50 nits to 100, well, less noticeable. And so let's say 100 to 200 nits, right? You're doubling the brightness, great. Then 200 to 300, not so. So that 100 nits become less and less important as the screen gets brighter and brighter. So in this case, 360 is what the G5 is capable of full field, as long as the S95F is within spitting distance of that. So 400 to 360, we'll have a hard time seeing the true difference. And another thing that many people mention, and this applies to both LG and Samsung, what is the amount of time it stays at 400 nits full field and the LG stays at 360 nits full field? My experience with the G4 and the S95D and the A95L is definitely the G4 held on to full screen brightness way longer in sports content. So I'll be watching, testing tennis, football, soccer, and max SDR, max brightness, vivid mode. The G4 barely blinked. I mean, it may have dimmed slightly, not very noticeable, whereas the S95D would hit that brightness. 15 minutes into it, go out, get a cup of coffee, come back. What happened? Significantly dimmer. We're talking half the brightness. So if it was, let's say, 300 nits, easily less than 200. I mean, it was that noticeable. And the Sony was even more dim, right? And so the suggestion is, okay, on both the Sony and the Samsung S95D and the A95L, best to watch in standard mode and not super bright, because then you're already dimmed it, so it won't dim any further, right? Because clearly it's not capable of holding on to the brightness longer, whereas the G4 was. And that was why it's my OLED sports TV watching use case of choice is the G4. It held on to that brightness. For hockey especially, full screen white, it held on to that brightness like indefinitely. So I'm sure it had more space to go even brighter, but it didn't, because it knew, hey, we don't want to dim over time. Let's just hit it at this brightness and we'll hold on to it. The question is, will the G5 hold on to 360 the same way the G4 held on to 230? I hope so. And so the S95F full screen 400 nits full field may work for 40 seconds. And I'm just throwing that out there, which is fine for most movies, right? Few movies are that bright full screen for more than 40 seconds. But sports, we're talking 2 hours of full screen brightness. Can the S95F hold on to that? So in my testing against the S95F, and we'll throw in some mini LEDs like the Bravia 9, so you can see why some people get a mini LED TV after about 2 hours that I'll record. What happens after 2 hours? Which TV stays bright after that amount of time? So good point, most disliked, but also keep in mind that dimming over time, right? ASBL. Hey, XM3, right up here. So SDR full screen brightness on the G5 is normally that 360 nits full field is close to the SDR brightness, because full field is full field. So it wouldn't surprise me if SDR full field is also 360, right? When it's full field, there's no reason for SDR to be more bright or less bright. Normally, it's the peak brightness in SDR that may or may not be limited based on that algorithm they're using. But full field should be very close to what you're seeing at 360 nits full field. And another point, G4 SDR 100% APL was 100 nits brighter. All TV makers, LG, Samsung, Sony, TCL, Hisense, anyone, they reserve the right to change the performance specs on the fly with a firmware update. So many of you unhappy S90D, S90C owners can attest to this. One day you have one of the brightest TVs ever. The next day you're locked out of the firmware menu system and your TV got dimmer, right? Now, for those of you who are counting pixel brightness, that really pissed you off. But for everyone else, they probably don't notice it. But that's something to keep in mind. XM3 is what I'm going to see at the Value Electronics Spring Kickoff event in May, where I'll have the S95F and the G5 side by side. All that brightness matching and all that stuff, where you're seeing which is brighter, 6 months later, will those retail units have that same performance? And this is why we tell you, if you like what you see, unplug it. Unfortunately, and this is where they get you, if you want AI features, you got to plug into the internet. Definitely, both LG and Samsung requires you to be on the internet in order to use any of their AI features. Now, some of those AI features, not very useful. But if you want, like for LG, if you want that always on AI-generated wallpaper, or any wallpaper for that matter, you'll have to be plugged into the internet. And Samsung, I think they have a more useful over-the-air, what do they call it, instant translation, closed caption that they showed off at CES. You got to be plugged into the internet in order for that to work properly. So something to keep in mind, like if you unplug it, you are literally unplugging many of the features that you may want. Now, if you don't care for it, all good, especially if you use a Apple TV, a Roku stick, Fire Stick, doesn't matter, then you could kind of get all of your AI from them. But just something to keep in mind that if you're buying for AI features, you have to keep it plugged into the internet. And this is why Adam buys external devices all day long. And since I'm going solo, if I missed your question, just keep on asking, right? I'll check for super chats every now and then, but sometimes I get off the rails and get in too deep, and then suddenly it's like, wait, did I miss a question? Yep, everyone is moving towards Tandem OLED. So we know Panasonic has adopted LG's Tandem OLED. Question still out, what's Sony going to do? And well, Samsung has adopted both the 83-inch S95F. Now, I haven't been given any inside information. However, from what they've told me, which is we made sure to buy the best technology available from LG in order to match the brightness of QD OLED for the 83-inch. Not in so many words, that tells me they're using Tandem OLED, because there is no way WOLED without this primary RGB tandem stack is going to get that bright. So, but we'll see. I'm trying to get Robert to have also the 83-inch S95F at his store when I get there in May. And so we'll match and see 83-inch G5 against the 83-inch S95F using the same flagship technology. What can Samsung do? Like, who's brighter? Who is more conservative holding back that brightness? So if I start promoting that now, Samsung will be on the horn knowing that, hey, Samsung, if you're known for brightness, don't hold back. This is your chance to get brighter than LG using their own technology. And unfortunately, Panasonic does not have an 83-inch this year. They have up to 77, but at least with Samsung, you have an option between Samsung and G5. If you need that matte screen, you got a Samsung. If you want the glossier one, then you have the LG. And I'll tell you, I did see the comparison of LG's latest Ultra Anti-Reflection against Samsung's last year, and we know how bad that was, the S95D's matte reflection. The Ultra Reflection actually is pretty good. Now, it's not as aggressive, but it does improve the reflection handling over the G4. The question is, what kind of reflection handling do you need? So that's something that it's so room specific. It's so hard for me to generalize. I can tell you this. If you have a spotlight behind you facing the TV, on The Samsung's S95D, it's unwatchable. It just flares across the screen. At least on the G4, it limits it to that light, but doesn't flare across the screen. I mean, both distracting, both terrible. Just depends on how terrible it is, right? The lesser of the two evils. Brent says, I will never buy a Samsung TV. Why is that, Brent? You know, the curious minds want to know, is it customer service? Is it the reliability? Or you just don't like the color? Or you forgot to turn off dynamic mode? All right, and Matt and Bev, G6 next year. So what are our guesses for the G6 next year? Would it surprise you if it happens to have MLA? No inside information, but I'd crack up. I think they would reserve the MLA for the G7. I think they want to squeeze a bit more performance out of this before they throw in the MLA. But for sure, there is room for them to improve because this is the first generation of the RGB primary Tandem OLED, right? Next year, they're going to push a little bit harder. And then maybe the G7, you'll see the MLA. But yeah, there's no doubt. It'll be slightly brighter, slightly everything. Here's something. Philips has teamed up with Roku to release, I'm not going to even call it affordable. It's basically priced between the B4 and the C4, right? It's like $1,200, $1,300. I don't know. Unless you really need Roku. This is not the same. I don't think this is the same Philips that they get in Europe. This is more of a rebranded Philips for North America. So the confusion is many of these name brands we're familiar with, different holding companies have different control depending on the region. So in the USA, Sharp was formerly held by Hisense, and then Hisense kind of sold it back, or Sharp purchased it back and took control back in the US. But you know, their resurrection in the US was not great when they did come back. Maybe they're selling it back to Hisense, who knows? But Philips in the US, there was never an announcement that they're the Europe-based Philips, the TVs you see in Europe. I have not seen an announcement that they're taking over whoever has the Philips license here in the US. I suspect it's the less expensive holding companies that are selling you the Philips here, right? So I have my doubts that it's a high-performing OLED, and it's not even that affordable. I'd rather get the B3, if you can get it, or the B4, before I get this. I don't want to call it no name, because Philips is the name, but this is not the same Philips you're getting in Europe. I'll tell you that. Not the same experience. Now, how important is the OS for you guys? So the webOS has been revamped in many ways. The ads aren't intrusive per se. Actually, they're pretty good with that. But they've definitely layered more AI features for you. So for example, they're using metadata from all your streaming content. So if you say, and when they partner with Microsoft Copilot, right, they're going to use the internet to drive this, again, the internet. And you say, let's say, I like Friends. I binge watch Friends. I'm done with it. What else can you suggest that's just like Friends? And so with AI, they will give you suggestions that's available for you to watch right now that's just like Friends. That's when Copilot is launched on the LG webOS. It's not out yet, but that's part of their project, is to help you find the right content that you like without you having to spend. I've spent 45 minutes sitting in front of the TV going through like 5 different platforms, including free TV, right? You got Pluto, you got all these things. Like I'm on Samsung TV Plus, and I'm looking like, man, I can't find anything. Like 45 minutes later, I'm like, that's it. Now I gotta go. And I've been on the menu for 45 minutes. And so that is definitely a pain point for many people. And that doesn't matter if you're on a external device or internal. You're still looking for the right content. So with Microsoft Copilot or ChatGPT, if one of these TV makers integrate with them, the goal is to say, hey, you've seen what I like. I like movies with romantic comedies that have Tom Cruise, right? And they'll find the handful with Tom Cruise that's somewhat a romantic comedy, right? They'll search that for you. But it's that level of curation where you don't have to search IMDb, you don't have to go on Wikipedia or whatever to find this, or go on Reddit, God forbid. The TV will have done all of that, or the AI, and then they'll spit out the results for you. So I think that's a game changer, maybe in 2 years, but then now you're stuck plugging into the internet. So until Apple TV does that, and we know they've pushed Siri off another year, I think Apple's Siri could have done it had Apple Intelligence started working, but it's not, so that's not happening. Then you have Roku, who are they partnering with? No one I know, but I'm sure they will soon. So right now, webOS is partnering with Microsoft Copilot, and Samsung is doing their own internal AI. We'll see who wins that war. So I think ultimately, what you don't like about Samsung or Google OS may end up being a moot point in 2 years, when it's really how good is each system's AI to get you to where you need by saving you time. Like settings. Hey guys, this motion stutter sucks. Can you give me something that's smoother? Well, the AI knows what that means, and they will throw up the settings. They will change it for you. You see what they do. Boom. Oh, I don't like that. Go back. They go in, they change it back. Like the remote ends up just being a microphone. I would much prefer that. Or, hey, what was FOMO's settings? And it will find my settings. It will give you my settings. What was Vincent's settings? What was Brian's settings? This is what I'm talking about. Again, whatever device you use, as long as it's plugged into the internet and it's plugged into AI, that is the way to go. So if I share my settings, as long as I share my settings on YouTube, AI will find it, and they will change your settings to the one that I'm sharing with you, and you can always go back. I think that is the future of remote controls. But let me know, is it worth it for you to get that? And you don't have to plug into the internet direct from your TV. As long as Apple Intelligence one day, or Roku, or Google Chromecast, as long as they access it through AI, you're good to go. So you can still get that. Well, no, you're not. They don't have access to your TV settings. I take it back. Your TV has to be plugged in. So is it worth it to plug it in just to get that and then unplug it? I don't know how we're going to game that one. All right. Wait, did I see Benedict Arnold somewhere? Someone's Benedict Arnold here. Sorry, I'm going through your questions and looking for it. So Arrow's going the other way. He wants more buttons on a remote, not minimalistic toy-like remotes. So Europe, for some of the TV brands and models, you get two remotes. You get the minimalistic one, Samsung specifically, and then you get this massive one with like 100 buttons. So me, I'm a button guy, but I know that my parents, grandparents, a lot of people, they just want to change 4 settings: volume, channel, maybe source, but most of them just leave it plugged into whatever cable source they have. It's really just channels and volume. They never change any other setting. For them, the simplistic is perfect. And they may be 80% of the population. So let me know, are you a like Xero V, lots more buttons the better? Or the more simplistic approach of, hey, no buttons? All right, Reap. FOMO, what are your thoughts on Samsung sales report showing they sold more OLED TVs than Mini LED? Yes, I saw that. This is a sign that Samsung will continue with QD OLED and it's not going to die. So Reap, it doesn't mean they'll continue with QD OLED. It could mean they'll just buy more OLED from LG. They've already done it, right? So they've bought LG's basic WOLED, right? B series level. We've seen that on the S85D, S85C, S89CD, whatever. And on their larger sizes, S90D, that's a WOLED. So they're looking at the numbers, and QD OLED, how much margin are they losing buying from themselves? Because Samsung Display is a subdivision of Samsung Electronics. It is not a separate company. And I know they're getting a special deal, but if LG gives them a better special deal, they may still go with LG because it's all about making money. Because to them, and to, I hate to say this, 90% of the population, there is no difference between WOLED and QD OLED. Now, the 10%, I would say you guys, the critics, the enthusiasts who are very particular about the content you watch, definitely you'll see a difference because you know where to look. But everyone else, oh, it's OLED. I'm buying it. And so Samsung might be able to get away with a cheaper WOLED and sell more of them. And that's another number I want to get into is they sell more OLEDs than Mini LED. But what kind of OLED? Is it the cheaper S85, S89 that we know is WOLED? And if they sold a bunch of those, what does that tell you? They're going to buy more LG OLEDs. So it doesn't mean that QD OLED is ripe for success. It means LG OLED is ripe for success. They didn't break down which OLEDs constitute this selling of more OLEDs than mini LED. And I'll tell you that mini LED has larger margins. So they're not happy to see that. I just don't know what the breakdown is, and they may never share that. It may be too much to share because it may hurt their feelings that QD OLED is not selling as well because it's so expensive, right? All right, got some super chats here. Thank you, everybody. So Rob, thank you for that super chat. I currently have an LG Z3, that's an 8K TV, 77-inch. Is it worth it to upgrade to the G577? You will definitely get brighter. So the only question for you, Rob, is this. First, unless you're sitting literally 4 to 5 feet from the 77-inch, you're probably not going to notice, well, no, you won't notice the drop in resolution because, one, they've had this experiment before with the Z2 8K TV, I think, maybe a few years ago, where they had like 20, 30 people compare native 8K content on the Z3 and then that downscale to 4K on the G3, C or C2, G2, Z2, right? 4K version of the OLED, same company, all that. And ultimately, only the people with better than 20/20 vision, we're talking pilots here, and they're all sat about 4 feet away from a 77-inch. Only they noticed the difference, and it was only on content with fine hair or fine animation, like Pixar, right? Where you have animated hairs, Monsters Inc., stuff like that, where furry creatures have individual hairs that's been digitally pixelized, so it's clear. It's either that or wildlife, lion with the hairy mane and all that stuff. So short of the content, and it's slow moving. That's another critical, it's an essential key, is it has to be slow moving. But if it's action, like Marvel, any Avengers movies, you could not see that resolution improvement. And so the conclusion is 8K, yes, you can see it, but it's content specific. So you're like watching National Geographic and it comes in 8K native, boom, there you are. Short of that, so let's forget that you're going to 4K now. And I'm sure you're not sitting 4 feet away, unless you're a gamer, then maybe. So the question is, do you find the Z3 to not be bright enough? In a dark room, it should be okay because it's equivalent to like a C3. But if your room is very bright and you're watching sports and maybe there's a little bit ambient light and a little bit of glare from the windows, then this Z3 may not be enough. And you're like, you know what? If only this TV is a little brighter, that's when the G5 comes into play. And that's when you would upgrade, is for that extra brightness. But normally, if you're in light-controlled room, I don't know that the content you're watching justifies that. So one, are you watching impactful, bright HDR content that the Z3 cannot handle? If you're watching mostly old movies, old TV shows, right? Turner Channel, AMC, nah, you're not going to notice it, especially in a darker room like a man cave. But lots of sports, mixed use, lots of bright lights everywhere. Then the G5 will come into play, both in terms of gaming features, more importantly, that extra brightness, that HDR impact in those kind of movies that have it in a bright room, that'll work. So you really have to understand what your use case is. But thank you for that super chat. We'll get to Asa Al-Shamsi. Thank you for that super chat from the AED. Do you think Samsung 128 processor is the same as LG? So it's completely different. We don't know how much of that processor is used to do some of that AI work, how much of it is focused on upscaling. They all say, oh, we're upscaling better, motion is better. But when it comes down to it, I think they both do upscaling fine. I'm stopping the motion, I'm going through slow-mo, I'm doing so much to see the differences. And in the past, there are some scenes where Samsung's doing it really well on their 8K TVs where their focus is sports motion. Well, LG this year has said they focused their processor on sports motion. So we'll see how good that is, how updated that is compared to Samsung. And specifically, LG is saying just watch 720p and 1080p sports content, see what we've done. It is going to be amazing. And we saw the demos, it looked great. But then I need to see, well, let's see how the S95F does. Let's see how the Sony Mystery TV does. So we don't know until they're side by side. All we have are marketing hype and some isolated comparisons, right? Like in my live stream, when I had just high school football running around, they all looked good, except the G5 had a little better contrast. How much of that is the new technology? How much of it is from better processing? I don't know, but once I have more time with it, we'll see. So yeah, wait for a few more months when we have some more content and more hours, and we'll be able to answer that a bit better. And I agree with the Red Pill. The C4 is a little bit better than the C3, but not enough to justify the $1,000 price difference. Agreed. Now, I think the biggest complaint with the C3 is its gaming image quality, near black, and it has weird color accuracy. It felt like there's something wrong out of the factory with its color. And even when you calibrated it, it didn't look as good as the A80L that year. And the C4 completely fixed all of that stuff. So it's like, wait, you couldn't fix this in a firmware? But that's only if it annoyed you. If you're watching the C3 and you don't do the kind of gaming that exposes the C3 and you're watching Friends, right, Seinfeld, not even worth a $200 upgrade in my opinion. So definitely it depends if you notice that at all. All right. So JD, I'm going to address this one. The 97-inch never gets the latest technologies. We're talking about LG's 97-inch OLED, right? The G whatever, G3, I think is the last one. We might get a G5 97-inch this year. Actually, we will get it, but it's just the previous G4 97-inch. What's the point of getting the 97-inch if it doesn't have the latest technology and it does not have that 4-stack primary RGB OLED? It's using the old stack, and I don't even think it has the MLA. So what's the point in getting it? And the point is immersion and size. If you're in the market for a 100-inch projector or a 98-inch mini LED, right? You can only fit 100 inches. This is going to give you the best image quality compared to the projector. So it beats the projector at 100 inches. Okay, let's put the projector aside. Now, for a mini LED to match a 97-inch, we're talking a higher-end mini LED. So you're going to have to go with the best from Sony, Samsung, and this year's TCL. But the question is it worth going to infinite contrast and off-angle perfection, which is on the OLED, versus the brightness HDR impact on a mini LED? And for me, if I'm sitting in front of the TV, I would probably go with a mini LED. We're talking a top-end one, like the 115-inch last year's TCL flagship. And I think this year they're going to release a 98-inch version of that. But I would go with the more powerful mini LED at the 98-inch size, only because I like HDR impact. But my significant other would probably prefer the 97-inch because she's all about SDR. That's most of her shows. So she doesn't care about HDR impact. If it's mostly SDR I watch, then I go with the 97-inch because it's just SDR. So the latest technology is still OLED compared to projector, in my opinion, as far as the latest image improvements, because it's still infinite contrast. But mini LED has come so close that most of us would probably prefer mini LED, especially in a bright room. I would definitely go mini LED. So yeah, unfortunately, it's no longer the only game in town as far as high quality image quality. It's only 15 seconds. Come on. I think the only reason is I don't have moderators. But come on, Corey, 15 seconds. You could wait the slow mode. I think last time we had this guy that kept on posting his private parts, and by the time we caught him, it was like 3 posts in, right? So I apologize, but trying to keep it quality for you guys. All right, all right. Are all the HDMI 2.1 ports on the G5? Yes, only the G5 and the Samsung OLED TVs have all for 2.1. We've been assured that the Hisense U8 this year will have 4 or at least 3 plus 1, with 1 being a USB-C DisplayPort adapter for PC gamers. So that's kind of interesting. But it looks like Hisense may be the first non-LG, non-Samsung to have 4 true 2.1 gaming ports. We'll see. We'll get more information from Hisense shortly. Okay, here's a good question from Nishant Kumar. FOMO, can you explain the difference between Alpha 8, Alpha 9, and the Alpha 11 AI processor in terms of RAM, memory, CPU, and GPU CUDA? I would if they showed that information. They did not. What they showed instead was the functional differences, and very specifically, the higher the alpha, the better the upscaling. Essentially, that's it. But they didn't go into RAM, memory, CPU, or anything like that. It was more of the qualitative differences, which appears to be, to me, kind of subjective. The qualitative differences of their upscaling prowess compared to the lesser alpha. So as far as the specs you want, LG was kind of, that's not important to them, so they're not going to dive into it. Let me see. I mean, it was somewhere in this presentation, so they're going to go over the alpha processor. As soon as I see it cross by, I'll pause there and we'll see. Brian's here. What? Where? Where's Brian? Oh, there he is. And thank you, Brian, for the super chat. I actually missed it. I've been so busy. And Brian's busy too. He has a premiere coming up right after this one. Quick reminder, I think I linked it in a redirect. So as soon as mine ends, Brian's premiere is going to pop up. So I'm going to be on there talking, chatting with you guys as well. So if you're not doing anything this afternoon, definitely hang around for Brian's premiere. That's going to follow my live stream. Keep up the great work. We should collaborate sometime. Yes, we should, Brian. Oh, you haven't known. Every time we go, they're like, wait, are those guys twins? And I'm like, yeah, I'm Arnold and he's Danny. All right. Oh, wait. Apparently, Buddy has the numbers. I can tell you that Alpha 9 is 4 core, 3 gigabytes of RAM with 2 core GPU. And I'm wondering, why does the TV need a GPU? Maybe to run the AI processes? So thank you, Buddy. I'm hoping that's accurate. I have no idea. And Commandant is asking, since I don't know, Brian, are you going to spill the beans on what Sony is up to? Ha, ha, ha. Let's see how weak Brian's will is. Greg, thank you for bringing this up. Hopefully LG will sell the stands for the G5. So it appears that the G4 stands could be used with the G5, I believe. So they're trying to make it as compatible as possible with the older stands. Either way, if you buy from Value Electronics, they will include a stand as part of the purchase price, an LG stand. Now, it depends if the LG stands are even backed up. Part of the problem last year is, or the year before, people got the G3, there were no stands available. They couldn't even buy it. They had to wait extra weeks for the stands to arrive. So when you order from Value Electronics, they'll get you a stand and it will be on its way at some point, but it's definitely subject to inventory. So keep that in mind. But yes, this is one of the reasons why I love I love Robert. He's like, wait, they want stands? I got stands. Tell them FOMO sent you. They're getting a stand. So, you know, he's there trying to add a few points to your ownership quality of life there. And follow up. Thank you, Isa, for another generous super chat. FOMO, what about the S95F? Mods to reach 4,000 nits brightness in Dubai. We have a full warranty even if we broke it with these mods, right? And it will be better than G5. I have S95B with a mod, and it's 2,000 peak 330. So let's talk about the mods real quick. So they're talking about modifications going into the menu system. We're talking about the actual calibration menu system, right? The menu that you only access with special codes. That's why you have to get a special remote control from Amazon, right? Get one of those older Samsung remotes, add in the code, and suddenly you access their menu settings, and you can go in there and change the anti-peak or whatever. Now, in the US, I do not condone this because if they find out you did this and your TV burns in, all the warranties that you bought, extended, whatever it may, or probably should, is their point of view, it will cancel out any warranty coverage because you messed with it in a way that it wasn't designed to be messed with. However, if you are in Dubai, consumer protections being what they are there, it's covered even if you mess up with it. Okay, so I don't know about any mods yet. I'm sure you guys will tell me. For my reviews, I don't touch the mods because I need my TVs to last. I normally hold on to it long term for long-term comparisons, but I'll defer to gamers who love to mod their TVs. And if the S95F can exceed 4,000 nits brightness, right? We're talking even brighter. Who knows what it's capable of if there's nothing holding it back, then by all means, have fun with your mods. Whether tone mapping can handle it differently is another matter, because tone mapping of the TV is matched specifically to what they think it's capable of. So we'll see, but you know what? Have fun with it. Now, this is not a reason to buy one TV over the other, because then you're just comparing, well, if I mod the G5 until it breaks, and then I mod the Samsung S95F until it breaks, which is the better TV? So we definitely will not be doing that. But I'd say, why didn't you get both since you're in Dubai and mod both of them and see what they're capable of, right? Because oftentimes LG is known to hold back their TVs so that next year they have something to improve upon. And we saw that with the G3 to the G4 to a certain degree. And so maybe with the G5 to the G6, they're holding back. So if those of you who know how to mod an LG, let us know. A modded LG versus a modded S95F, right? It's when you add nitro into your engine, all the turbos, right? If you guys watch all those car documentaries where they just push the car until it almost explodes, it takes off 0 to 60, right? What's the nitrous capacity on these two TVs? Let me know. Okay, will the Samsung S95F have a glossy panel? So from what I saw at CES, on the S95F table, I saw a label that said anti-glare. However, the specs that the media has been sharing says the S95F will not have the latest anti-glare. So it's a mixed message for me. I don't know. I have to see the S95F in person now, because the one I saw at CES looked like it had an anti-glare, but as I'm looking at my notes, they're saying it won't. But then why did you label literally every table on that display said anti-glare, anti-glare? It was on the 8K Q Neo QLED, the 4K Neo QLED, the 83-inch S95F, and on the S90F table. That same label was there on that table. And so I was under the impression, wait, all the TVs have anti-glare this year? But then if you look at the specs that were shared, all the media outlets, it appears to be limited to the flagship Neo QLEDs and the S95F. So who knows, right? I don't want to say the S95F does or doesn't. Let's see what happens when they're released. I mean, at this point, I'll reach out to Samsung and ask them for clarification. So we'll see. Hey, Plasma. He's here. Good point. Hey, I previously teased the Sony Livestream for later this week. Yes, it's happening on March 13. I'm going to put up a save the date probably tomorrow. Yeah, so sometime tomorrow, maybe Tuesday morning, we'll put a save the date for March 13. I'm going to do a live stream talking about why it's so amazing, and you guys will be pleasantly surprised. That's all I can tell you. Robin asks, and this is a good question, this is why you would get the G5 or the G4. Is the improvement in color luminance clearly noticeable in person? It was my main thing to wait for the G5. In the right content, yes. In content that's not challenging, no. So that's why I put up The Witcher. In The Witcher, they all look the same. Just color calibration differences out of the box, but no luminance differences, or rather no saturation differences. But in some of Jennifer Gallo's content, I definitely saw a difference between the G4 and the G5. But this is Jennifer Gallo content that was 2,000 nits, 5,000 nits, right? 4,000 nits. And so for you, Robin, I know gaming, you'll see the difference because some games are graded at higher brightnesses, HDR impact and all of that. And so on the G5, you'll have more color saturation. So if that's your use case, where you're watching content like Jennifer Gallo, or you're watching less than a handful of movies like Alpha, where you're going to see more yellow in the sun, right? A brighter orange sun versus more of a light yellow, almost white sun with less clarity and less brightness. Yes, the G5 definitely is improved over the G4. But if you're watching, I don't know, the Academy Award, the Oscars, right? All the Oscar nominees the past week would look the same on the G4 or the G5. So, Robin, what is your use case? And we'll see if we can help you navigate that. Because if you don't need G5, get the G4. Is it worth going up to the G5 for mainly sports watching? So, Chipper, if you have the G4, that's fairly bright for sports watching. Now, not as bright as the Bravia 9, but not that far behind. G5 should be a little bit brighter. I think the G4 is bright enough for most people. But if you're not most people, the G5 is slightly brighter. Is it worth that premium? I'd say get the G4 home. Now, what I like about the G5 is it has improved reflection handling. So when you combine that in a room with a lot of ambient lights and the brightness, that makes a difference. And the G5, well, actually, let me throw this in as well. It's slightly brighter with better contrast. The G4 is bright, but you lose a little bit of contrast, meaning the color saturation dropped and it affected the contrast. It looked a little bit washed out, but it was brighter. The G5 was even brighter than the G4 without losing the contrast. So both are fine for sports, but I felt on the G5, there's a touch more clarity because the contrast was preserved, because you weren't washing out all the colors. Everything felt like it had that white dilution, right? The white subpixel kind of lost it when it was that bright. Good question, actually. Yeah, I noticed that when watching the brighter sports scenes. All right. How many of you have given up on physical media? Let us know. I have. For my use case, I've been using Kaleidoscape for almost a year now. So you guys will notice it in my reviews, not because, oh, it has better image quality. It's just so much faster for me to navigate and select movies, put in a script, boom, 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 it hits all the scenes, I'm done. In the past, with a Panasonic player, I had to, where's the disc? Put it in, put it out, put it in, put it out. And then literally every 12 to 13 months, I had to call Best Buy, time to replace the disc player. You know, I had it on the 2-year replacement warranty. So I'm constantly getting replaced disk drives, or rather the entire machine. And it was just such a waste of time for me. So moving to Kaleidoscape is essential for me, for sure. Oh, wait, let me pause right here. AI superscaling. So apparently, this is what you're getting, right, with AI superscaling. This is the AI stuff. Now, this is available on the local machine. I don't think you need to be connected to the internet to get these improvements between the Alpha 11 and the Alpha 9. But, wow, that's kind of drastic. It's like, what? The Alpha 9 added color too? Like, I need to talk to engineers about that. Are you, like, why couldn't you add the color on the A9? What do you need super scaling to get more color? That didn't make sense to me. All right. Okay. Brett, you have a super chat. I don't see your question. Ask it again, and I'll look for it, and we'll put it up. In the meantime, Chalky Bets, thank you for the super chat. If you had $5,000 and you mainly watch sports and Netflix at night, would you buy the 77-inch G5 or the 83-inch G4? Definitely the 83-inch G4, which is still incredibly bright. I mean, at night, so light control, 83-inch G4, that's your budget. I mean, for most normal people, I'd say get the 83-inch B4 and you'd be happy, because when all the lights are off, there is no reason to get it that bright. I mean, it's pretty bright, even on a B4. But for HDR impact, right, you know, like color accuracy, the 83-inch G4 in a dark room is just very good. It's excellent. I would take the extra 5-6 inches over the G5. That extra immersion to me is more important than that little bit of brightness on the G5. Unless you want the new AI features. And I think they're rolling in those AI features on the 83-inch G4 as well, because it's connected to the internet. So they're going to roll out a lot of these features backwards compatible once it's out on the older TVs, just so you guys know. Let me see, what other reasons? Yeah, that immersion, it's really important to me. And the G4 is so close to the G5, as you saw. Short again, you only watch sports on Netflix, you're not going to notice a difference unless you blast that G4 in vivid mode, max brightness. Then you'll lose a little bit of contrast, but in a dark room, I wouldn't do that. That's way too bright. But yeah, no, adequate. Go for the 83-inch G4. Save some money. Have some fun. And the audio on the 83-inch G4 is actually good enough for nighttime watching that you may not even need a soundbar. All right. So, yes, I think I'm looking for Brett's question. Brett, if you're still there, I will ask you a question if I can find it. Scroll up a little bit to see if I can find Brett. But thank you, everyone, for showing up and spending your Sunday with me. I know we're all excited about this new generation of OLED TVs, right? And we're not just excited about the G5. I'm excited about everything that's coming out this year. Samsung, LG, TCL Hisense, they're all bringing something uniquely different to different use cases. And Sony is special. Can't say more than that, but Sony is going to be special this year. Titus says, can all the AI features be disabled on the G5? Absolutely. They made sure that all the AI features, you can toggle it, but most importantly, if you unplug it from the internet for sure, you're not going to get any of the internet-driven AI. And then picture settings, they have specific AI settings you could turn off. The only thing that I don't know that could be disabled on the G5 is the sharpening that was not disableable. So on the G4, you could not disable sharpening last year, even though they promised that you could. Ultimately, you couldn't. That was the G4. The G5, they're making the same promise. They're saying sharpening can be disabled, but then again, will it be disabled as a default? Can you turn it off later? We'll have to see. This is something that Classy is incredibly sensitive to. He hates sharpening, so he's going to test that the minute he gets the G5. I'll wait to see the results, but short of that, yes. LG is very good at allowing you to disable as many things as possible. All right. Looking for some of those orphaned questions. CE Critic, FOMO O'Brien, you guys are going to join the micro LED presentation later today from AWOL? Not me. I have another appointment. I'm preparing another video for Monday's launch, or actually Monday's LG pricing video. I have to prepare that for Monday. So I'm going to do a live stream on Monday, or a video for Monday, talking about the pricing and where the pricing lays compared to the competition, and importantly, how the tariffs may affect that pricing. So actually, we can mention it really quick, CE Critics, since you asked about micro LED, which led to pricing for the G5 and all TVs. So if you don't know, all the flagship TVs I had last year, and probably the ones this year, are all made in Mexico. Mexico is subject to the tariffs for now. Now, whether they are still continued to be subject to those tariffs in a month or 2 months, Black Friday, who knows? But for now, let's assume they are. What does that mean? So what it means is the MSRP will probably stay the same, but the ultimate discount may not be as aggressive as it was in the past. As you guys know, let's say a TCL, right? The QM6K launch at $999. By Black Friday, it's like $650. Will it be $650 this Black Friday? I did the math. Maybe it ends up being only $850. Right? So you're still going from $999 to $850. Wow, what a great deal. But the year before, on the QM7, it was just under $700. So that is how it's going to affect you, which means, and explains a lot of the reason why sometimes the MSRP is so much higher than the street price. This gives them room to adjust the street price up a little bit while still giving you that quote-unquote discount. So ultimately, street pricing will be higher than before. I don't believe that MSRP will be higher than last year. That would be terrible, because there's so much room left for them to just raise that street price a bit higher, so you're not getting a huge discount. So that's my prediction, is you'll notice street pricing higher than last year's street pricing, but the MSRP should be the same across the board from everyone who's making their TVs in Mexico, which is everyone. Oh, yeah. Thanks for the reminder. Hey guys, don't forget to like the video. You click like and suddenly more people will join this chat and keep things fun, active. All right, Gadget, this is a good question. And I see your super chat, Robin, so you're up next. If you were going around looking for a 90-inch TV this year for HDR content, what TV technology and brand would you look closest at this year? Picture quality that rivals OLED. Well, rivaling OLED requires you to have the best of the best. And this year, the best of the best will be TCL, Hisense, Samsung. I mean, they've done some things. I can't say more because I'm still under NDA, but affordable, TCL and Hisense, or more affordable, TCL and Hisense, very close ever since they're both adopting the next generation of wide view angle coatings, technology, or whatever it is they're using. So that was the biggest difference. Off angle, OLED preserved all that contrast, all the color saturation, color accuracy. On angle, they looked very similar. So if you sat in front of the TV and didn't move to the side or didn't sat on the far end of the couch, they looked very close that I would say, hey, save some money, get a mini LED TV. In a normally lit room, you won't notice the difference for most content. But now you're sitting a little bit off angle. It still looks pretty good, not as perfect as OLED. It gets them that much closer. So I would say look at the QM7K. Well, I haven't seen the QM7K yet. I'll be getting it in a few weeks, but the QM7K, the QM8K from TCL, and Hisense's UX, not the micro LED one. Let's leave that one out because that one is going to be prohibitively expensive, over $10,000 easily. But the U8 and the U7, those two at the 98-inch size should be very compelling and close to OLED. Not OLED, but definitely cheaper than OLED at that size. Samsung, we'll see how aggressively they can price their 98-inch TVs this year. And Sony, we cannot talk about until we see their releases. But it's going to be fun. For 98-inch shoppers, I'll tell you this, you're going to have a wealth of choices. And Robin, follow up. Thank you. Thank you, FOMO, for answering my question. I mainly watch 4K Blu-ray discs content, so it might be worth it for me, depending on the disc, of course. Absolutely. And just to remind you, Oscar-worthy movies are very conservative about their HDR. It's actually the near black content. And actually, that may be relevant to you. Near black, the G5 is better than the G4. The G4 near black loses color saturation. And I spoke with Classy, and while he was there, he tested it. It appears that the G5 has solved that. So I'm going to say watching those dark, moody movies, Oscar-worthy movies, 1917 and the like, right, Game of Thrones, the G5 actually does better than the G4. You're going to have more color saturation near black, none of that black crushing that some G4 and G3 people had issues with. And I know it's panel to panel as well, but the G5's technology stack directly addressed that. So yeah, actually now that I'm thinking back at it, you're watching movies, you're watching quality movies where they're looking at the other side of the nit spectrum. Rather than going over 1,000 nits, you're watching movies that are 0.5 nits and below, right? And it sounds dark, but actually in a dark room, you're supposed to see all the details. So I'm thinking maybe you should get the G5 now because near black, you're going to see all that shadow detail. And QD OLED does this pretty well as well. But if you are a LG fan, yeah, this might be worth it for you. So look at the reviews from the G4 last year, and if that's the kind of movies you watch, the G5 will definitely do better. And that's the reason why the G4 lost some of the shootouts. It's the near black color saturation issue. We always get one of these. Can we get 12-bit panels first? Come on. 10-bit FRC? Come on. If you guys don't know, this ongoing desire for 12-bit panels, and I'm going to side with ratings, mostly because they said they've done so many tests, both objective and subjective, and they could not tell the difference. Same content, 10-bit FRC, versus 12-bit native. They just don't know what the difference is until someone has content that requires 12-bit native panel to do, whether it's to avoid the color banding or whatever. They didn't see any differences between the two. That's when we could say, okay, we got to get 12 bits. So Corey, find some content where, I don't even know where you can get a 12-bit panel. Maybe some special monitor or something, right? Because no one even says what kind of panel they have anymore. So it's kind of tough. Okay. Hey, thank you for the follow-up. Asa Al-Shamsi. FOMO, what is the best TV tone mapping in HDR? G5. From what I saw, now, it doesn't mean the S95F isn't quote-unquote better, but the G5 just destroyed the competition tone mapping. The Sony, we all know, does not, well, the Bravia 9 does well, but the A95L does not do tone mapping well above 1500, above 2000 nits. The G4 was pretty good last year, but the G5, man, it tone mapped everything I threw at it. That 10,000 nit content from Jennifer, there was nothing it couldn't tone map and preserve brightness. It did not aggressively bring down that brightness. It was brighter and had the tone mapping chops over the S95D and the A95L and over the G4. So right now, the G5 is in the lead for best tone mapping flagship OLED TV, bar none. Bravia 9 is also very excellent, but it's not OLED. Yeah, so for you, this is another reason not to get the Samsung. Yes, I'm very confident the G5 will be one of the best in-class tone mapping of 10,000 nit. Now, not that you watch 10,000 nit content, but anything over 2,000 nits, the G5 is going to nail it. I was very happy about that. Maybe I should have mentioned it more, but if you watch my live stream and where those clouds, and I paused where the clouds were, I said, right here. I mean, from that far off, I can see the details in the cloud. What, there were 65-inch TVs, I was like 20 feet away. That's how good the tone mapping, because I saw the clipping. I was like, Caleb, are you seeing this? We can see the tone mapping improvement from 20 feet away. This is nuts, right? So yeah, no, the G5 nailed it with tone mapping. It is in the lead and may end up winning the rest of the year. Very impressed by that tone mapping. Now that you brought it up, Isa, yes. G5, very good tone mapping this year. That processor is doing magic. Hey, Casimir, thank you for that super chat. Is the G5's clarity noticeably better without MLA? So let's dive into this. The G5 clarity was better than the G4 clarity, super bright, at super bright modes. So I'm in vivid mode, right? Sports content and that high school football, both are in vivid, both max brightness. The G4 came close to the G5 in brightness, but to get there, you lost some of that contrast, you lost a little bit of color because the bright is pushing that brightness so hard to get you there. The G5, slightly brighter, preserved all the color and the clarity. So in super bright vivid mode, the G5 better without MLA. But do you watch sports in vivid and super bright? That's when I saw it. But if you watch Filmmaker mode, I did not see anything from 20 feet away that would say, whoa, look at that. Now, pixel peeping being what it is and how I do it, I may, right? So, but honestly, if you go super bright, and this is what we do, is we push these TVs to their edge case so that you see why you're paying more. Like, why do you pay more for a super fast sports car when all you need is a RAV4 or Toyota Highlander? It's when you do take it to the track, then the Highlander falls off the road, right? And this is the track. When I push it to that maximum performance, the G5 performs better without MLA. But driving around town, going to the supermarket, watching Netflix, watching old movies, the two will be very similar. And I think it's less about MLA and more about the new 4-stack OLED approach versus that lesser WOLED approach. And thank you, Mr. Lee, for the super chat, and welcome. New person. Do you think Sony will learn this year and improve their packaging? I returned 2 A95Ls due to scratch displays and gave up, hoping for the A95M. I don't know. I haven't seen their packaging. I am surprised, frankly, that Sony did not include a peel-off sticker to avoid scratches on the display, honestly. So, yeah, I don't want to venture that they will, but I'll let you know. When, if I get the latest 65-inch, I will tell you if I have to peel something off the front, and that would protect it from scratches. I'll tell you the TCL QM6K had a very tough peel for me, but we'll see. I think they will. I think they will. If they get enough complaints. Now, Mr. Lee, since we're on the topic, what you need to do, go on Sony Connect. So YouTube has a dedicated Sony hosted channel. It's called Sony Connect. Sony runs that channel, and it's specifically to get these requests. So it's run by my friends Derek and Larry, right? Funny gentlemen. And they're there to receive your complaints, your suggestions. And if you show me, hey, I returned two A95Ls, scratch displays, there's nothing to protect it from the box, you guys got to put some kind of plastic peel on that. They're going to make sure that Sony headquarters get that message, but you have to show up. And they have a daily live, not daily, weekly live stream. I think sometimes twice a week, right? So go to Sony Connect. Twice a week, they have a live stream where you go show up and start yelling and screaming about all your Sony suggestions. They're there to take it. Because I told them, hey, if you're open to suggestions, like, yeah, please, that's why we have it here. So please, by all means, show up to Sony Connect, well, don't super chat them, but live stream and make your requests known and tell them your story. Please share that story with them. That's what they want to hear. This is a good comment. I'm going to have to put this comment up only because I wonder how many of you agree with this comment, because I have my thoughts about this. Okay, so Ephraim, another regular. Thank you for showing up today, my friend. Filmmaker mode is dead. And so you guys saw my live stream, right? Filmmaker mode was unwatchable in that room. It was so dark. I'm like, really? Do I really watch in Filmmaker mode? Now, you guys know in the studio, right? It's dark. It's literally pitch black. I have everything blacked out. Filmmaker mode is perfect. However, at LG, where we had no fluorescent lights, nothing super bright, but a typical bright office setting, Filmmaker mode was unwatchable. Movie mode, where I put the Samsung in active, still too dark. And that applies to LG. I mean, standard mode was the best one. And if you saw, I had to play with exposure to really capture the differences, even though it was in Filmmaker mode. But I think the reality is, you guys in a bright room, make sure that you have the option to increase the brightness. If it's Filmmaker mode or movie mode, if you're in a Samsung, you have to go to active HDR or increase the gamma if you're allowed to. And on the G4, they have like Cinema Bright or something like that, or Dolby Vision IQ, where they turn the light sensors and they'll adjust accordingly. And Sony has Dolby Vision IQ as well, and as well as Panasonic OLEDs. You're going to have to get to that brighter film accurate mode, because Filmmaker is just too dark if you're not in a dark room. So yeah, Ephraim, if you're watching in a bright room, I'm sure it's dead to you, and you have every right to be unhappy with it. Hey, could have said it better myself, Iceman. Look at that. I should have just posted your answer and moved on. Right. Hey, Sam. Thank you for the super chat, my friend. Is the flush bracket for 77-inch G2 same as the 83-inch G5? I don't know if it's the same, quote unquote, but it is a flush bracket. And this is a little bit of insight. So at the presentation, LG said that they had overwhelming requests for the flush bracket instead of the stand. That's why they did it. It has nothing to do with saving money or cutting costs. It's just everyone who bought the G series last year, they made sure to ask for that flush bracket. That's what they want. They don't care about the stand. And the handful of people who need a stand, well, you could always buy it, quote unquote. But for most people who got the G series last year, the feedback was, we don't want the stand, we want the flush bracket. Now, if it's the same or not, I do not know. You're going to have to reach out to LG support specifically for that, and they'll answer that question. If you go to lg.com, they have the chat, ask them, and they'll let you know. But yeah, I can't confirm if it's the same one as the G2. Hey, but thank you everyone for showing up. Don't forget, click like and So this video goes out, there's 400 of you. Can you believe it? 400 people enjoying a little bit of OLED talk. And I'm not limited to answering questions about OLED, obviously. As you guys know on my stream, if you have a question about the G5, boom, we'll answer it. Is it for you? But if you have any questions about any TV, is that TV for you? Ask it, because here's your chance to kind of suck my brain dry. But for me, let me get into, is the LG G5 for me specifically? Yes. And I'm not talking as a reviewer. My biggest problem with the G4 was I had some crushing issues with the G4 when I was watching Dune, right? The Dune 1. During that nighttime invasion, it did not look good. Actually, Dolby Vision, I think it looked a little bit better, but it's just the HDR rendering. If I made the adjustments to raise the black, it raised everything. It was not accurate. And it was not accurate to the reference monitor. It was not accurate to the Samsung, nor the A95L. And it was, for me, in that scene, it was not as watchable. And this is a major movie. And so for me, the G4 failed right there. And I was very disappointed. Now, for sports, beautiful. And I was very clear during my review that it just depends on what you watch. If a lot of your movies are like these scenes, you're going to struggle in a dark room. Now, in a bright room, turn up the gamma, Dolby Vision IQ, it's going to change it. It'll look much better. But if you want to go for accuracy, that scene for me kind of... Now, I spoke to Classy and Dwayne, and apparently this is a panel-to-panel issue. Not all panels suffered from this. Some did, but some didn't. So a lot of people are like, oh, I have no problems with that. That's because they got lucky. They won the panel lottery there. I didn't. But the G5 appears to have, specifically this technology, gave it more range, dynamic range, meaning low end is accurate without sacrificing the high end color saturation. Because in the older technology, you have to decide where do you want to accurately saturate. And they chose the middle ground, right? Any higher than the middle, you lose a little color. Any lower, and you lose a little color. So now you get more of it across a brighter luminance range. So for me, the G5, I was never a critic of the color luminance issue, because I know realistically I'm not watching Jennifer's content outside the review, right? Mostly Netflix, Disney Plus, Max, all that good stuff, or some movies on Kaleidoscape. Color luminance is fine, right? Short of Alpha and a few movies that I would never watch again, but everything else, the bright luminance, it looked great. I didn't have any issues. It's that near black that is in even more movies than bright scenes, and everything in the middle looked great, right? So for me, the G5 is definitely a go, and I do some gaming. PS5 Pro, I don't need the 165, but I do enjoy the gaming features they have on the LG. It's pretty consistent, and yeah, so G5 is for me. The S95D, it is my reference TV, because in the dark, perfect. But if I was in a brighter room, which is normally my house, it's got skylight ceilings and everything, I wouldn't like the loss of contrast on the S95D. So that was kind of like, oh man, in the dark, the G4 is losing this. But then if the room is too bright, the S95D is losing this. And then I end up with the A95L. So, but this year, I think the G5 has addressed all my criticisms. So that's kind of where I stand right now on the G5. But I'll be getting it whenever it's released. I'm going to hold on to it long term. So we'll have some fun. And let me see. Oh, wait a minute. Who is this? Wait. We have a special guest. And let me throw in our good friend here. Is the owner of Value Electronics, but maybe you know him from being the actual organizer and the person that launched the annual TV shootout, because he wants to know what is the best TV. But today, we're talking about the LG G5. More importantly, two things are going to be happening. One, we're going to share the prices with you tomorrow. I was going to say next week. Tomorrow, I'm going to put up a video where we go over the prices and have a discussion about whether this price is worth the upgrade and who should upgrade, all that good stuff. So Robert has those prices waiting, but we cannot share it now. But more importantly, though, if you pre-order or you order from Robert, he will include a stand if you ask for the FOMO deal, because he has all these bundles. But if you tell him, hey, give me the FOMO deal, well, the stand is part of that FOMO deal. And a lot of people are very excited about this, Robert. Now, do you watch your TV with a stand? How do you do with this from Value Electronics? And they say, hey, give me the FOMO deal. Can you include the stand with that? because a lot of people really need that stand.
We will do that for FOMO customers. What I did do, thanks to you, FOMO, and Brian of Brian's Tech Therapy, is because you were promoting the G5 and our company, Brian pushed me hard, and I did an exclusive. Nobody does this. 10% store credit whenever you buy a
Oh,
G5. And that's thanks to you and Brian's Tech Therapy that I'm doing that. And that's exclusive to our company. And we're cheaper and better than anybody on the G5. We're also getting LG's first allocation, which will be
excellent.
in about 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks.
So I'll put it right here. 10% off is part of that FOMO deal.
Well, it's
Uh,
actually a store credit, a
Store
10%
credit,
store.
10%, and they can use that for additional warranties, matching sound bar,
Yes,
a
yes,
stand, whatever, right? Calibration services,
right.
sent additional store
Yeah,
credit.
that's right.
And yep, there you go. So use
Use
it
it
on the
as you like.
stand. Have fun, guys. Thank you, Robert, because that really
Yeah,
helps them package whatever they need. Cables, players. Maybe they could use it to get a kaleidoscope, which I love
thank
mine.
you.
So now tomorrow, we're going to be releasing prices and everything, right?
Yeah.
Do you have an
I
idea?
actually just put them up a little bit early, but I just did it.
Oh no! All right. Well, you didn't
Yeah,
hear it from me. I don't want to get myself in trouble, but Robert put it up on his website. Check out his website. It is valueelectronics.com. Now, as far as arrival, if they order their TV, how quickly can they expect to get it once it's ordered next week? Do you have a delivery time estimate? Is it limited by size?
yeah, that's right. It will be a little different for each size. The
Okay, which is the
48 inch
first? Uh-huh.
and the 97-inch are coming in last, but all the other screen sizes will be no later than the middle of April.
Oh,
55,
okay.
65, 77, 83, middle of April at the latest, and more likely early April.
I'm excited. Wow. Okay. That I think if you have any questions about the purchase process with electronics, this is the time to ask it. And if you're getting a G5, just a reminder, you're getting a 5-year panel warranty anyway, but there's always the option of buying additional extended warranty if you want, right? If you're that risk-averse person, just let Robert know and he'll apply the 10% towards that, towards now. Personally, I don't think it needs to be calibrated. I think it's amazing out of the box. What I saw at LG, I'm like, okay, we're there with Filmmaker mode. So I say spend it on, I'd say the soundbar with a subwoofer, LG's latest. I heard that demo, awesome. That's around 1500. Or spend it definitely on the stand if you need that. So just something to keep in mind. Or a player if your player is broken. All right, let's see. Let's see some questions we have here. Oh, tariffs. Robert, have you seen any pricing changes due to the tariffs? Is it about the same as
Uh,
before?
yes, I'm sorry to say yes. Yes. Now, some companies, in anticipation of the tariffs, told us that April 1st there'll be price increases.
Okay. So we'll find out the exact bad news when I post that video tomorrow, and we'll discuss that for sure. Here's a
Right.
question for you, Robert. Will you include the appropriate stand with a 77-inch G5 for those who don't want to wall mount it? And the answer is yes, absolutely. Just tell Robert, hey, FOMO sent me, and boom, stand, well, 10% store credit. Apply that to the stand, and you'll have it. So yes, thank you so much, Robert, for that. That takes the stress out because I'll tell you, when I was on Best Buy and the LG website, it was so hard to find the stand. You couldn't even add the stand to the cart. On the Best Buy, there is no stand. You have to go to like the chat. Hey, where's your stand? They have to special order it. Robert will handle all of that. So yep, all good. And
Also, you may have noticed that the only other retailer other than us that has them available right now is Amazon. And
which
Amazon's
does
price,
not include the stand.
no, it does not. And it doesn't include my exclusive 10% store credit as well. But right. But it also is about 10% higher than our price. So they're about $400 higher than we are.
Oh, wow. Well, and they don't get the 10% store credit for
No,
what, for calibration services, whatever. Yeah.
that's right.
And here's a great question. Is the G5 worth it over the G4 for Xbox gaming? So the complaint with LG, both C series and G series, is SDR gaming. It's not as bright as QD OLED. G5 addresses that. So if you do a lot of SDR gaming and you need that extra brightness, G5 will hit it. Now, if if you like the G4 already, like let's say you already have the G4, there's nothing wrong with it, don't upgrade. Only upgrade if you find there are issues with that brightness. You want that extra punch you're not getting with the G4. The G5 gets you there because at higher luminances, you preserve color saturation. And so we're not talking about 165 or 144, right? Xbox doesn't do that extra frame rate, but what it does get you is that additional HDR impact and overall screen brightness if you need it. If you're fine with what you have, then don't upgrade. But I think the G4, I mean, the G5 is going to be quite a premium. We're talking probably it's like 1,000, depending on the size, $800 to $1,000 more. I would go with the G5. Two reasons. One, it's a panel technology that addresses all the shortcomings of the G4, but more importantly, you're getting that extra year of support from LG with firmware updates because the newer your TV, the longer that support lasts. And for gamers, the firmware updates always specifically address gaming. LG is definitely a gamer's friend among all the TV brands. I'd say they're one of the best at addressing gamer issues. So the G5, G4 over the G3, G3 over the G2, every year they definitely spend time working on gaming quality. So for a gamer, I don't want you to get the G4 only to see other people, the G5, saying, oh, I have this and this. What about you? You're like, oh, I don't have it. So, but if you're playing basic games, right? But I think if you're pushing Xbox, getting the latest games over the next few years, you might want to consider the G5. And Brian's premiere is starting in 10 minutes. So we're going to jump over there and join him in a little bit. And Robert, thank you so much for supporting our community. Thank you for giving them the discounts that they want and providing them a fair value for a TV that I know is going to be hot demand. And I predict you're going to sell the 83-inch faster than any other size. That is going to be a phenomenal size for gamers. And before we go, let's see if I can hit a few more questions, but definitely let's head over to Brian's channel to watch his premiere. FOMO, I don't know if this has been asked because I just got here, but do you know if LG has enabled turning on brightness in SDR? I didn't specifically test that, so I cannot answer that. I wish I did, but we'll see. So I cannot confirm or deny. Maybe Classy did. You can try asking him on his video, but I can't confirm. But all right. And what about the green? Swirling Dragon Mist, the green was definitely better on the G5. Classy confirmed it in the movie, that scene from the It, from It, from It, where it's that green cave. The G5 nailed it, beat the G4 in that scene. It would have come closer in the shootout had it nailed the green, and the G5 nails it. So the green is solved on the G5. So if that was a concern for gamers, no worries anymore. Okay, let me see. And one more. Hey, what should I do? Get an 83-inch B4 with Alpha 9 or 77-inch C4? Get the 83-inch B4. I liked the B series so much, and if you're getting size, if you're a gamer, I understand, right? You want the most that the C series has to offer, but if you're watching content, the extra size makes up the difference. So I would get the 83 B4 over the 77 C4. All right, now. Okay, I think we're going to wrap up here. I'm going to head over to Brian's premiere. Robert, and guys, it'll send you over as soon as this stream is over. But Robert, thank you so much. Robert has shared with me all the prices and everything. We're going to talk about pricing tomorrow on another video. But until next time, stop the FOMO. Thank you, everyone, for coming. 400 of you, click like on the way out. Thank you so much. Until next time, stop the FOMO.